On LR1-1, we're going to define some important vocabulary, and then we're also going to learn how to notate that vocabulary. So our first vocab word is point. It is the most basic building block, so I can put points together to make other things. It has no length or width, but it does have a location. And I represent it with a letter. With a dot, sorry. I name it with a letter. So let's say I picked a point on my bagel, like this specific one, and I called it P. When I talk about it, I'm going to say point P. I'm going to write just the capital letter, though. So if I was asked to name this point, if I was writing it, I would just have to write the capital M. If I'm talking about it, I'm going to say point M. Now, if I put a whole bunch of points together, I get a line. Okay, so a line is really just a straight, continuous arrangement of a whole bunch of points. It has infinite length, but it has no width. And I name it with any 2 points that are on the line. So it's kind of like an infinite piece of spaghetti where it just keeps going and going and going. And let's say on that piece of spaghetti, I have X and I have Y. I could say line X, Y. I'm going to write X, Y, and then I have a little baby line up ahead. And to show that it keeps going forever, I have my arrows on either end. Notice I only got 2 letters. So even if Z is also on there, I'm only picking 2 of them. I never pick 3 and I never pick 1. So if I wanted to name this line, I could call this AB. I could also call it BC. I could call it CD. I could pick AC. I could pick BD. I could flip any of those, so I could have BA. I could have CB, etc., etc. There are so many combinations. You pick any 2 letters, draw the little line up above. All right, my parallel lines are lines in the same plane, and we'll talk about planes in a minute. And they have 0 points in common. And I show that they're parallel when I write about them with these 2 lines that are parallel themselves. Okay, and I can remember that because they've got the 2 L's. Parallel has the 2 L's as well. So if I was reading this out loud, I would say line AB is parallel to line CD. Perpendicular lines then meet at a 90-degree angle, and they have exactly 1 point in common, right? So they're my lines that look something like this, where one keeps going here, one keeps going here, and there's a 90-degree angle in between them. And I write that they are perpendicular with this little upside-down T. Okay, so this one would read line DE is perpendicular to line FG. And then skew lines lie in different planes and have 0 points in common. So imagine if I had a line laying flat on my iPad, and then I had another one coming out of my iPad straight up and down into the air through this point. Okay, so one's lying flat, one's coming out of your iPad. They don't cross. They're not on the same plane, but in 3D space, they are 2 different lines. Okay, so those are skew lines. They're never going to meet, but they're also not parallel. Plane then, not the kind that sometimes kills birds. A plane is a flat surface that extends infinitely. So it's kind of like an infinite tortilla. It has no depth, but it has length and width. And I represent it with a parallelogram. I name it with a capital letter, and I use cursive letters for this. So let's say I had a plane. I'm going to draw a parallelogram, and in the corner, I'm going to write a cursive letter. I would say the word plane M, and I draw it again as a parallelogram. So if I'm asked to draw plane P, I'm going to draw a parallelogram, and then I'm going to do my best cursive P in the corner. Collinear means they are on the same line. My coworkers are people that I work together with. And then the word line is right here. So collinear, together on a line. So for example, A, B, and C, all collinear, they're all on the same line. Coplanar then, again, co means together, and the word plane is right here. We just dropped the E because that's how English works. So together on a plane is coplanar. So for example, D, E, and F are all on the same plane. So I can say they are coplanar. D, E, if I drew a line through them, are also collinear, so they could be both. So I'm asked to draw a set of points that are both collinear and coplanar. So I'm going to start with my plane. And then I'm going to draw on my line. And I'm just going to put some points that are on that line and within that plane. Beautiful. A line segment is 2 points and all the points in between them. Okay. I name them with the endpoints. So I can't pick any ones I want. I have to pick the endpoints. And I'm going to write it the exact same way I did with my line, but instead of doing the little baby arrows, I leave them off to show, hey, this is not an infinite piece of spaghetti. This piece of spaghetti has a start and an end. Without the line above, that stands for the distance between A and B. So if I say AB equals 5 centimeters, that means if my picture looks like this, that length is 5 centimeters. Congruent means that 2 or more segments have equal lengths. I'm going to write it as an equal sign with a little squiggly above. And I could say AB is congruent to CD. All right, this is a little complicated. Distances and lengths are equal. Objects are congruent. So I can say 7 equals 3 plus 4 because that's using numbers. I cannot say this triangle equals this triangle because they don't, because they're not numbers. They are congruent because they're identical because I copied and pasted it and made them exactly the same, but the triangles are not equal, they're congruent. Their areas are equal because their areas are numbers, but the triangles themselves are congruent. This is something we'll touch on throughout the year, so if that feels fuzzy, don't worry, we'll be circling back to it. Okay, so for example, without the lines, I'm referring to the numbers. So MA equals TH. With the lines, I'm referring to the actual line segments. They're identical, so they get the congruent sign. This one is referring to the numbers. This one's referring to stuff. Lines, squares, whatever. All right, my midpoint is a point on a line segment that is exactly in the middle. And that means that it's going to bisect it into 2 congruent parts. So bisect means cut into 2 congruent parts. The word bicycle has 2 wheels. Bisect 2 congruent parts. So that means a midpoint bisects a line segment. My ray is going to begin at an endpoint and continue infinitely in one direction. So it's like that infinite piece of spaghetti, but we're cut off just one end. I name it using an endpoint followed by any letter that's on the ray. So if I have a picture like this, and I have X and Y is over here, and maybe we'll snuggle Z in there as well, I can call this XY. I can call this XZ. I cannot call this YZ because my endpoint is X, so it has to go first. Okay, notice up above, I drew a little baby ray up top to show, hey, it's a ray. Even if my ray is going the other way, so let's say it was looking something like this, even though we read right to left, and so it's tempting to say, oh, I'm going to call it BA, I still write A first and then B. I would never do something like this. That's ridiculous. All right, so we're asked to name this ray. I'm starting with my endpoint, and then I'm picking one other letter that's on that ray, drawing a little baby ray up above. All right, we're going to do one together that's a little bit of a doozy. So I'm asked to name 3 points that determine plane A. Determine just means, hey, 3 points that are on plane A. So when I look at plane A, that's this one. I have S, P, Q, and R that are on there. So I can pick any of those. So I'm going to pick S, P, and Q. You could pick R too, though. Then I'm asked to find 2 points that determine line N. Again, determine just means they're on it. So here's line N. Q and P are both on line N. So those are my only 2 that I can pick. And then they want to know, hey, on which plane does SR lie? Well, SR is right here. So if I were to draw that in, it would be laying right on top of plane A. That was a terrible cursive A. There we go. And then I'm asked to name any 2 coplanar points. So if I pick T, I can pick Q or P. If I pick R, I could pick Q, P, or S. If I pick Q, I could pick T or R or P or S, right? Because Q and T are on plane B, but Q and R are both on plane A. So I've got a few different choices there. I'm going to pick S and Q because I like those letters. You can pick whichever 2 you want as long as they're on the same plane.